Harp Techs. Welcome to HARPSMITH Benchcraft. My name is Kenya Pollard. I am your HARPSMITH. It was 1973. I was holed up in my bedroom, and this is what I played. Yes! I can bend! Paul Butterfield, Lee Oscar, you too, Magic Dick. There's a new kid in town. Oh man, was I confused? I thought playing a special effect on the harmonica was the same as playing musical notes that could only be achieved by proper bending. So what is bending? For those of you who want to get into the science, get into the weeds about the bending phenomena. Check out David Barrett's videos, his papers, Pat Misson, Steve Baker, Dr. Henry Monson, James Antaki, great resources. But for us, for here, how can the harp tech optimize the reeds so that it would favor bendable notes? For example, what you heard were 11 musical notes played out of only 3 holes. That's pretty phenomenal, okay? What we're going to do today is focus on those 3, 2, 3, 4. Arguably the most popular and important holes for the cross harp second position players. Also, while we're on the bench, let's take a look and discover how is it that you can identify all the bendable notes on the 10-hole Richter tune harmonica. So clear off your workbench. Hey, let's get to it. Let's demystify the process of identifying what bendable notes are available on a 10-hole diatonic harmonica. Here I listed a C harmonica and its layout, holes 1 through 10. All the notes above the numbers represent the blow reeds, below represents the draw reeds. Look at this. I put a vertical red line here. That's to give you folks a heads up that there are some shenanigans going on inside your harmonica. What I mean by that is take a look at the lower end of the harmonica, left of the vertical line. Did you notice all the higher notes, the higher pitches, are on the draw side? Then it does this weird flip-a-do, 7, 8, 9, 10, where the higher notes are actually above. This explains why you're able to blow bend up in this range, and why you're able to draw bend below the 6. Take a look here. I listed the C chromatic scale. This is important because this is going to map. This is going to index how you plug in those available bendable notes. Now, keyboard players have an advantage, I think, because all the half steps are right in front of you. See? So you have 12 half steps. How that applies to the chart? Let's work on hole number 3. Hole number 3, by far and away, has the most interesting, indeed, the juiciest bendable notes available. Let's determine which notes live here. G is our blow reed. Go to your scale, circle G. B is on the draw side. Locate that on your scale. And then you'll identify those notes that live in between. So sandwiched between the G and the B are B flat, A, and A flat. For those of you not familiar with the musical theory conversion, A sharp is exactly the same as B flat. G sharp is exactly the same as A flat. F sharp is exactly the same as G flat. D sharp is the same as E flat, and C sharp is the same as the D flat. Harmonica players tend to, and I suppose because we're bending down, we tend to think flat. So I'll use flat. So back to the chart, this is what you would plug in. Our first half step bend is a B flat. Next will be a whole step bend, and that'll be A, followed by A flat, which would be a step and a half. Let me demonstrate. Okay, and this time around, I will end up on the G so you can get and listen to the full scale. So you find your G. Now that's pretty darn cool to be able to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 notes out of one hole. Arguably, as a second position player, I love hanging around 2 draw. Let's take a look to see what notes are available there. So E, G on the draw. So the notes that are available between those two fall like this. Now, I'm going to actually write both here because admittedly, I refer to my F sharp as F sharp. Rarely do I call it a G flat, but I'll put it there just to amuse myself. And then F will be our whole step bend. Half step bend, whole step bend. Listen. Yeah, that's a tribute to the Batman theme in 1965. That one's for you, Steve Baker. Playing it as a scale. Not bad that we're able to pick up 2 juicy notes on the 2 draw. So the technique applies for any of the holes that has a chromatic spread. Let's do 1, because 1 matches 4, okay? So 1 draw below, is C. The draw is D, and there's only 1 note that lives in between, and that's the C sharp D flat. And it's exactly the same, 1 octave higher. This is our middle C. And that would sound like draw. are those lovely 11 musical notes that we can get just out of the 3 holes. This HARPSMITH bendable note identification chart is available at my website, harpsmith.com. Feel free to download it, print them out, and create the bendable notes for each one of your harmonica keys. It will be invaluable to you. There are numerous techniques for gapping harmonica reeds. Today, I will demonstrate 3 of my go-to methods utilizing these tools. My focus will be on holes number 2, 3, and 4. Arguably, the 3 most important holes for a second position cross harp harmonica players. Gapping refers to the distance the reed sits above the reed plate, and it's measured in thousandths of an inch or millimeters. Caliper can read that type of precision, including the depth gauge is at the bottom of this instrument. However, it's unwieldy to manage this thing when working on harmonica reeds. Instead, I use these presets. Feeler gauges, shim stock. This one is 7/1000th of an inch or 0.18 millimeter. So I use the caliper to verify the precision. And as you can see, 0.007, this is perfect. So I actually don't need the calipers after verifying my tools are in good order. I'll put that aside. There are 2 sections, almost 2 chapters to gapping a harmonica reed. We have the rear part, let's call that the rivet, and then we have the free end of the reeds. A little difficult to see here, so let me supersize it. I know what you're thinking. Man, that is the largest harmonica reed I've ever seen. And you would be right. Sitting on top, this single reed, this black represents the reed plate. The screw is your rivet. The line is the boundary of the reed pad. Gapping will happen in 2 sections. This section here is known as 0 point, setting the 0 point. It's actually a phrase coined by Dick Schoberg, our friend from Sweden, but it is a popular term used in CNC machining, computer numerical control machining. X means left, right, Y represents forward, back, and then Z, 0 point, is depth. And that's what we're concerned about, is we're concerned about this gap. Even supersized, you can hardly see it. When we're working on the reed, I want you to measure back about 1/8 of an inch from the pad, because our focus will be in that section, and we're going to be setting our 0 points for just that little section. And of course, it varies with the length of the reed. As you get higher up the octave, the reed gets smaller and smaller, and therefore that 1/8 of an inch becomes like a 1/16 of an inch. After we set the 0 point on your harmonica, then we're going to be focusing on the free end of the reed. And by contrast, I'm beginning to think setting the free in is actually easier than setting the 0 point. But you be the judge of that. Let's get started. You can do a visual inspection of your 0 point by utilizing a device like this, a light box, or a white sheet of paper. Stand your reed plate on end, and then you're going to peer down through the slot and look at the back towards the rivet end, and you will be able to see a sliver of light. I am working on the blow reed plate. My focus will be on reed number 2. I prefer 0.001 for my 0 point, so I want to verify that first. This is super thin. You can see how I kind of wrinkled up this shim stock, and it can tear, so be careful. So I lay it flat underneath the opening, the free end of the reed, and I guide it towards the back. And then I'm going to feel a little bit of resistance, and now I'm going to shift my left thumb, and left thumb, right thumb. I'm going to actually feed alternate. Oh, there it is. Okay. So now it bottomed out, and it feels pretty good, but I want it tighter. I didn't want to be able to push it so easily. So that tells me I can go and lower the 0 point a little bit more. And while I'm at it, I'm going to examine number 3. Again, line it up, carefully feed it, slide it in. Similar. And then finally number 4. So, same. Okay, so my preference is to have it a little bit tighter. So in other words, have it be 0.001 or 0.025 millimeter for those of you who think that way. Let me get set up with the tools and show you how we're going to drop down the 0 point. The first method for setting the 0 point on reed number 2, I'll be using Richard Slay's reed profile tool. Not the hook part, but the flat part, the wedge part. Okay? And I'm going to use it as a press. Let me demonstrate. So I line up parallel the tool, and I'm guiding it, but supporting it with downward pressure on my left index finger. And then when it reaches the back, when I land at the rivet, I'm going to pick up the back end, the hook part of the tool, maintaining pressure on my left finger, and I'm going to start lifting, okay? And I lift because the goal is to apply pressure here onto this section of the reed, because I want to push it downward closer to the reed plate. Let me pick it up so you can get a side profile. So I'm flat. My tool is flat on the reed plate, on the reed itself. See how it nests right there at the rivet pad? Okay, now I'm going to pick up the back, but I'm applying pressure downward. Of course, I'm holding it so you can't see it, but my left index finger will be applying pressure thus, okay? And that is going to push the back of the reed closer to the reed plate. Now, another Richard Slay trick is you're going to rock. You're going to take the tool and you're going to actually rock it over, oops, blocking your view, over the reed. So every time it rocks, the flat part of it here applies pressure, downward pressure on that rivet end. Let's see if I can demonstrate without blocking your view. That's rude. Okay, I know what I'll do. I'll swap hands over here. A little bit of ambidextrous. Okay. Kind of a pendulum move, but each time I do that, the reed gets closer and closer to the reed plate. So method number 1 is using Richard Slay's reed profile tool. Method number 2, setting the 0 point, is an advanced move and a tad scary. It requires the use of this brass-lined pliers, toothpick, and patience. Let me demonstrate. I took a section of toothpick and I cut it in half, so now I have a half barrel. And it's cut exactly to the length of this. Let's see, I was working on number 2, so now we're working on number 3. So I nest the half section of toothpick inside the back slot of number 3. Okay, this is going to work like a backstop. Because I used to do this technique without the backstop, and truth be told, I damaged reeds because it's an extremely aggressive strategy. Okay, apply the pliers there, and then I push it up until, similar to the Richard Slay tool, it nests right up to the rivet pad. You see that? Okay, now I'm going to squeeze. I'm going to apply pressure, and I can feel it. So this is about practice. And what that did is it lowered, again, it's an aggressive move where the Richard Slay one is very gentle, little bit at a time. This one will send your reed down much quicker, and it will reach the thickness of the toothpick. You could see I smashed it in there. Need the sometimes I need the razor blade to pry it out. There we go. Okay. And that sets the 0 point, again, quicker. It's a more aggressive method, but it works, and it works well. Give it a try. Method number 2, setting the 0 point. Before we move on to the free end of the reed, I wanted to reiterate my recommended gapping for the 0 point. Here's the blow reed plate. We're using a 0.001 inch feeler gauge, 0.025 millimeters. To check the gapping, we carefully slide the feeler gauge all the way to the back. And now it's feeling a little tight because remember, I had already lowered the 0 point, so I'm satisfied with this one. Okay, so you would do that for every one of the 10 reeds up to the number 10. Now, for the draw reed plate, it's a little different. I found 2/1000ths of an inch, or 0.05 millimeters, works really well for the draw reed plate. Same principle applies. You can see on this feeler gauge I actually put a bullet tip on it. That's easy to do. I just did that with a pair of shears because the material is so thin, and then I sanded any burrs off of there. But I found with the bullet tip, it's easier to get inside deep, okay? Technique still applies. You lay it flat. Let me change that angle so you can see it. So I'm parallel. My feeler gauge is actually laying flat right on to the reed plate. Okay, so with the number 2, I push that to the back, release, and again I'm guiding and supporting because it's easy to buckle and it's easy to slip and cause just all kinds of mayhem. So be careful. Use your thumb here to guide it flat and back towards the rivet end. Okay, and you can see my thumb here is slightly over the reed itself because I don't want it to lift up and buckle. Okay, so that looks pretty good. And then I pull it straight out. You repeat all the way up to the upper octave, reed number 10. My customers find 0.002 on the draw, 0.001 on the blow, to be very good settings for their type of playing. Give it a try. You may find 0.002 is your preference on the blow. Only you can decide. It is your personal instrument. Set it up the way it feels right to your breath. Also available at HARPSMITH.com, free for the taking. Help yourself. Download the reed calibration charts. You want to build up a library. You're going to identify the harmonica key you're working on because each key is slightly different. For example, how you set up a G might be different than what you do on an F. Okay? So you document that. The numbers still apply. 1 through 10 represents the holes of the harmonica. So let me give you my recommended gapping for the free end of the harmonica reed that many of my customers prefer. To blow, let's set that up as, I'll put 7, that represents 0.007 of an inch. And on the draw, I'm going to match that. When we move to the 3, I'm going to drop it down slightly to 6,000. And I'm going to match that on the draw as well. For you overbend players, you're going to find this is going to change. You're going to find you may drop down the gapping slightly more on the blow, slightly more on the draw to facilitate the overbending process. Number 4. Yeah, I'm going to stick with the 6 on that one there. And we're going to match it over here. Because in this episode we're focusing on holes 2, 3, and 4, I'll stop right there. And let's apply that. Let's apply the 3 different methods for setting reed gapping on the free end of the reed. Method number 1 for setting the reed gapping on the free end of your harmonica reed, I call the Lumberjack. The Lumberjack because they use wedges to split wood. Here's a chisel with a steep angle on the end of it. And I wanted to demonstrate on my mock-up here what happens when you drive a wedge onto a flat stock. Let me turn it up on end. And watch carefully the free end rising upward. See that? And of course, as we drive it further back, it actually gets higher and higher. Let me do that again. Okay, so the Lumberjack method works very well for us harp techs. Practically speaking, let me show you how that works. There are tools that you saw earlier that have a wedge on the end of it, and that would be the Richard Slay reed profiling tool. So let's take a look at our reed. We're going to place the tool flat. I'll use number 1 over here only because I still, well, actually, no, I won't. Because remember, I dropped the gap, the 0 point, on 2, 3, and 4. So it's low, but I'm still able to pick up. See, there it is. I'm able to pick up and lay the tool completely flat and ease it back towards the rivet. Do you see? Do you see how high up the free end of the reed bolts up? Do you see that? Okay. Now, if you're having a hard time catching it, then reach below with your fingernail and just simply push the reed up. See that pop up? Like that, yeah. Then we load it, okay? So the idea is to very softly and just push it back, push it back, push it back, and then take a look at it. Ah, see, that's actually looking pretty darn good. So good, in fact, I'm going to grab the 7,000s is what I recommend. And let's see how we did. Yeah, so that's pretty darn good. And I'm constantly reminding harp techs, a harmonica reed is spring metal. It's a watch spring that coils and recoils, coils and recoils, okay? And so it has memory to it. After I change the profile, I want to be able to pick it up and plink it. This is plinking. And plinking will relieve the stress of the changes I made. And you'll see that in a second. Okay, by plinking it 3 times, now I can't get my 7,000 feeler gauge underneath. because it dropped back down. So, aha, so that was informative. So that tells me I could be a little bit more aggressive. Okay, let's do that again. Feeler gauge, let's plink it. That's looking pretty good. Okay, I still see it bouncing. Bouncing means I dropped it. It's still too low, probably around 6,000. So one more time. A little more aggressive. I'm going to be a little more pushy, like that. And you look at that and you go, oh man, HARPSMITH, you overshot. That looks pretty high. Maybe not. Let's plink it. 2, 3. There I am. So that's perfect. So method number 1, the Lumberjack, using wedging, works really, really well to set the free end of your harmonica reed gapping. What else could you use? There's a novel tool made by David Church from the Bomb that looks like this. Included on here is a reed pick to be able to manipulate underneath. But the real cool part about this tool is the slope. Do you see the wedge on there? And so I'm going to, again, lay it flat. Doesn't quite fit in. Again, reach in there with your fingernail, pop it open, and then you can feed the tool right underneath the reed. Same principle applies. Just gently push it forward, back, and check. Okay? So this is, again, by David Church. His company is The Bomb. And I believe he just simply calls this the reed tool. Now, about 20 or so years ago, the first set of tools I acquired was from Lee Oscar. And this is the reed pick. You can see with the hook. But the thing that I liked best about it is the little spatula, the little plinking tool on the end. So I buffed it up. It's almost a razor edge, knife edge, excuse me, not a razor edge, or else I'd be bleeding all over this set. So early on, I found this wedge technique works really well with this tool. See? The same principle applies. You're laying the tool flat along the surface of the reed plate, and then you gently move it back towards the rivet end, and then you watch the free end lift up. So this humble tool here is what got me started with the whole lumberjack wedge idea. All right, so you actually have 3 tools readily available. I'm sure many of you have this in your kit somewhere and you forgot about it. Bring it back out, buff it up, put a knife edge on it, and have at it. But if you already have the Richard Slay reed profile tool, well, then you have that on the end. And again, the Bomb reed tool is another option. So here's 3 different tools that you can use for the wedge technique. Now, what don't I like about the wedge technique? Well, the problem is you worked really, really hard to get the perfect 0 point. And sometimes without realizing it, by applying your wedge, you're actually increasing the 0 point back here a little bit more than you would care to see. And that is why we're moving on to method number 2. Method number 2 for setting the reed gapping on the free end of the harmonica reed, I call the break. It's a term we used when I was a HVAC, heating, air conditioning mechanic back in the 70s, where we did a lot of sheet metal, and sheet metal needed to be bent, and it had to be bent on an edge. So we used tools called breaks in order to fold the sheet metal. So I like to refer to that because that works really well for us harp techs. Earlier I mentioned that I'd like to see the 0 point about 1/8 of an inch on average. As we get higher up the octave and the reeds get really small, then like a 1/16 of an inch, okay? But we're working on reed number 3 here. So measuring from the border of the rivet pad, come out about 1/8 of an inch. So right about where I'm pointing here. You all see that? So once you establish, and again, it's an approximation. Once you establish that, then you're going to use your thumbnail. Keep your thumbnails in shape, you harp techs. So I'm going to move that up to that 1/8 inch. Again, I want to protect the 0 point. That's the whole point of this thing. But yet, I still need to get lift on the free end of the harmonica reed. So now I'm going to get my reed. This is a reed plinking tool. You'll probably notice it looks like a feeler gauge. In fact, you're having me reminisce. This was the reed plinking tool in the Lee Oscar kit, and it was somewhere around 5/1000ths of an inch. So again, I filed it to a bullet tip, put a knife edge on it, and this is one of my, I can't be separated from this tool. I'm using this as my reed plinking tool continuously. So I found for setting gapping with the break method, I pull it out. So you line up and try to be as square as you possibly can with your fingernail. Okay, I'm going to lift up temporarily so you can see that I put the reed plinking tool underneath and I'm sliding it back. Put your fingernail right there on the outer boundary of your 0 point. Insert, 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 boom, right there, stop, okay? And then you're going to lift up and then drop back down. And you're going to take a look at that, okay? This is 6/1000ths of an inch we decided, right? So you get the feeler gauge. And it doesn't take much, gang, so we're actually there. But if I was to plink it, it'll drop down. So let me go back in. Many times, and after doing thousands of these, I get a little bit more aggressive, more confident. And so what I would do is actually jerk up a little bit. It's like, boop, boop, like this. So the movement is, okay, it's like a nervous tick. Then I would measure it, plink it, okay. So this one is actually perfect. So what's perfect about this technique is that the break method protects all that wonderful work you did by setting your 0 point. What else could you use? If you didn't get your manicure and you don't want to use your thumbnail, what else could you do? Richard Slade turned me on to this tool. It's made by Pelco. I believe they call it the duck bill tweezers. Here's the part number on it, available on the website. Now what's neat about that, and yes, I did take this and with light grit, I think I used 1,000 grit, I buffed it. I sanded it so that I now have a very, very, very sharp edge. Let me pull that back so you can see that better. And you're probably thinking, wait a minute, HARPSMITH, that looks like a wedge. Could I use that like you did in method number 1? Yes, absolutely you can, and I do that, where I would actually take one blade of the tweezer and just to fine tune, I would slide it back and stab it. See that? This is a very versatile tool. So how would you use it? Let's go back to the number 3. I'd go right to the edge of where I established the outer border of my 0 point. Okay. I'm applying downward pressure on this bottom one. Okay. So the bottom one doesn't move. Sort of like using chopsticks. The bottom stick you don't move. You move the top one. That's just a tip. Slide it in. And then I'm going to lift the heel of the tool upward towards me. Okay, and it's very, very gentle. When you're first doing it, you're not sure, so always check. And you can see I was a little bit too aggressive. In fact, I'm probably a 7/1000 now. Yep, see, I'm up at a 7,000. But if I plink it, let's see if it drops down to where I want it. Yeah, in fact, the plinking dropped it down. So I go back in with the Pelco. And again, I'm applying downward pressure with this bottom piece. That's what's holding it. Sort of like the anvil, and the braking tool is on the top. And then I bring the heel of the tool up towards me, and I'm putting the angle, I'm putting the profile exactly where I want to see it. Yeah, see, that's about a 7, so I'm going to plink it, plink it, plink it, plink it, plink it. Boom. And there it is. Now, what happens if you overdid it? Regardless of what method you use for setting up your free end gapping, what if you just blow it, okay? And the darn thing is sticking straight up. All right, so the best way to do that is to use the soft pad of your thumb right at the rivet end and just squeeze down, okay? And it's going to lower the free end, okay? Bounce it, squeeze, okay? And I lowered it a little bit more than I should have. Okay, another method is Remember when we were doing the different 0-point gapping? This tool works good for that too. So another thing that you can do is to use the flat bill part of the tweezers and apply downward pressure on the 0 point, and then that will lower the free end for you. And again, that's if you became too aggressive and the gapping is much higher than you care to see it. So the thumbnail with the reed tool or this Pelco duck bill tweezer, man, these are really good methods for protecting your 0 point as you properly set the gapping on the free end of your reeds. Method number 3 for setting the gapping on the free end of your harmonica reed, I call the swaddle. You know, like a newborn being swaddled in the blanket, held tightly and cuddled, almost like a hammock. Let's go back to our feeler gauges. We established that the preferred feeler gauge for the 0 point was 0.001. So let's use that one. So for this method, I'm going to put the feeler gauge and slide it all the way back until it stops and nests at the rivet end. Then you're going to grab the middle or end of the feeler gauge. Let me turn it so you can see the, and then you're going to lift up on it. Lift up on it. And the feeler gauge cuddles, supports the entire length of the reed, so you can be assured you're going to protect your profile. So just bounce it, lift, 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 pull out, boom, and check. Okay? Now, for the draw, my recommendation was to use 2000, so I'm going to grab that one. Same method. Push back, push back. Grab the middle or end of your feeler gauge and lift. And you can see how, like a hammock, it just supports the entire length of the reed. And you pull that back out, okay? Let's double check because I'm curious, because it looks perfect. Yep. So this one is a 6 thousandths is what our preference was for reed number 4. So the swaddle method may be your new best technique for setting your free end gapping and protecting the reeds at the same time. I recommend you play with this, experiment with that, and see if you like the precision, see if you like the way those settings lay out for you. I don't think it would be a stretch for me to say that mastering the nuances of reed gapping is critical for the harp tech. The only way to truly unlock the capabilities of the harmonica, especially bending, is to match the reed gaps with the player's unique breath pressure. Try it. See and hear how it plays out for you. Thank you for joining me on this episode of HARPSMITH Benchcraft. You will be surprised at the improvement of your bending skills. If you're interested in building a library of reed calibrations and settings, not only for yourself, but for your customers, feel free to go to my webpage, HARPSMITH.com, select Benchcraft at the top, navigate down, and just download those reed calibration charts. You're welcome to it. If you're interested in owning a HARPSMITH harmonica, select Products and navigate through my store. If you would like to leave me a comment, which I read them all, do so down below, or you can send me a private message, Kenya@harpsmith.com. Until then, play the notes people want to hear.